Welcome back to The Remote Life. My name is Han Talbot, also known as Han Meets World, and today we'll be chatting with Paul Dow. Originally from the UK, Paul is a co-founder and director of Traverse Events and founder of In Departures, a crowdsourced platform that provides detailed, authentic, and user-contributed insights about airports across the globe. In this episode, we talk about who In Departures is for, the development of digital nomad needs and lifestyle, as well as Paul's favourite locations and carry-on must-haves. So grab a coffee, a tea, or something stronger, and let's get started. Amazing stuff. Paul, welcome to the Remote Life podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Very warm and sunny over here in Brazil at the moment. So yeah, pretty good. Life's quite good. How about you?
I'm good. I can't complain. I'm in very sunny Vlora in Albania right now, but I definitely am jealous of you and your Brazil situation right now. So why don't we dive straight in? Tell us about you and your remote life journey so far.
So in terms of remote life and digital nomad and that kind of stuff, yeah, a few years ago before the pandemic, myself and my girlfriend, we packed up our things from London, left London and went remote, mainly around Europe. We did a bit of Philippines, around Southeast Asia as well, that kind of stuff. So yeah, we were remote working and Airbnb, that kind of thing, and working online and living that kind of life until the pandemic came along and kind of slowed that down quite a lot. And we had to make some quick decisions in terms of where we're going to be based, because we kind of saw lockdowns coming in Europe and potential lockdown in the UK. So we made the decision to go home to kind of help family out, and have been there as a base since, but still traveling around all year, mainly with that as a base. But yeah, a little bit of a change from like digital nomad, kind of traveling all the time, but kind of works quite well, but is an extra expense. But we'll see. We might have to get rid of the flat and go full time again at some point.
I mean, I'm not going to discourage you from that at all. It's funny, I always kind of think of you actually as one of the sort of OG digital nomads. I feel like, you've always been sort of off going like somewhere new and exciting. Where has your favourite destination been so far?
As a digital nomad, I don't know, like people always ask that question with travel as well, like where's your favourite place out of all these countries? And it's kind of like, for me, they're all so different and they've got so different things to offer, so cuisine, the culture, all that kind of stuff. But I do love Portugal as a destination that I could potentially like retire in, I think. Love Southeast Asia as well, and the Philippines was amazing in terms of people are so friendly and the landscapes, the beaches are amazing. South America's amazing as well. So it's not, I don't think one place, but maybe Portugal if I had to pick one. Someone actually asked this on Threads the other day. So if I had to pick one to kind of retire and stay in, then maybe Portugal.
There's definitely a lot going on there, and I can completely agree on that one. And like, if I really had to pick, Portugal is currently definitely in the lead for me. Dare I say that? But
yeah, a lot of digital nomad things in Portugal as well. There was a conference fairly recently.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, like the Algarve, the Ericeira. Like, it's so exciting to see so many different communities popping up around there.
Yeah.
And I feel like I should quick cheeky plug that if you guys are around at all in October, then definitely come and say hi at the Nomad World Summit, where I'll be leading a workshop. So definitely a little cheeky plug there.
I knew something was happening.
Yeah, but I feel like Brazil and South America is definitely a very good alternative. Is there anything that you think people should know about those destinations? Just South America in general, for example, because I feel like it sometimes gets idolized a little bit. So is there anything that you think people need to know before taking that leap?
It's a good question. I think, Brazil I'm in Brazil at the moment, but I'm lucky because I've got locals to take me around. But it's kind of funny because I kind of don't have my independence as much because they like taking me around in a car. It's kind of funny because I'm used to like solo traveling and finding my own way around and maybe getting on a bus and going somewhere. So it's very different. But in a way, that's a great tip in itself. If you know locals and be in touch with in South America that can show you the real culture of a destination, that's probably one of the really best tips you can get, because they'll show you the real sides of the country and the real best places to go, rather than just the digital nomad spots maybe, or the tourist spots that you will go and be familiar with. So I think if you can connect with locals, maybe local nomads or travelers that would be willing to show you around in these destinations, I think that's a really good tip to kind of get beneath the surface of a country.
Yeah, for sure. No one knows the destination quite like the locals, so it's a very good entryway for sure. How do you, obviously, I feel like you've got a very unique sort of entryway, but is there any way that you would maybe recommend for people, like for the first time digital nomad, like any place you would go, or like any, I mean that virtually or in person, like where would you go to find locals?
I think it's kind of, we found when we were traveling that it was quite stressful to actually be traveling quite often as like a nomad, digital nomad, like moving on every week or so. we found like staying for a longer period of time was always the best way to approach it for us, in terms of maybe staying like a minimum of a month in one place and really getting to know a destination. I think the longer you can stay in one place, even though you are moving around, the more you kind of get out of it, and the more likely you're going to meet locals in certain situations. So maybe you'll join a local club, maybe you go, I wouldn't, but maybe dancing, that kind of thing, dance club, or maybe just some hobby of some sort, some sports, maybe a running club that you could join, these kind of things where you can get to meet locals and meet friends. And a lot of countries, they're very welcoming and they want to show the best side of their country and what's happening there. So I think if you can connect with local communities in clubs and sports and hobbies and things like that, I think that's the way to go. And I think spending more time in a destination definitely helps as well.
For sure, there's some very good ideas there. And speaking of visiting different countries, I feel like now is a good segue to chat about In-Departures. So tell us about it, how did it come about, who's it for?
Yeah, In-Departures, it's a side project of mine. So being frustrated with not knowing what is In-Departures when you travel, I came up with the idea of crowdsourcing that information online on a website. So essentially crowdsourcing ratings for airports in terms of security, gate information, baggage, check-in process, all these kind of things, and also getting tips on those. Maybe the security, you don't need to unpack your liquids, you don't need to unpack your laptop. Having that kind of information given by travelers before you get to the airport is really useful. So I built a website where you can log in, create an account, and you can add tips to different airports when you travel, and you can rate them, and you can browse the other tips so you can find information. There's a lot of people searching at the moment for smoking areas in airports, which is quite unusual. But I guess if you're a smoker, it's kind of important, like, to know where you can smoke. So there's that, and there's water fountains, that kind of stuff that people really want to know where they are at airports, and they're quite difficult to find sometimes. So we've got people crowdsourcing that information on the website. So you can sign up, and I'll send you an invite, create your profile, and when you're next to an airport, you can add some tips, add your frustrations, that kind of thing, and get some insider info on what the best things at the airport are, or whether the lounge is worth visiting, and that kind of thing.
I'd be so curious to know, is there a particular story behind like In-Departures? Like, how did that come to you, like, as a concept? Because when I think about it, I'm like, well, duh, like, that makes total sense to have something like this, like, especially as obviously somebody who goes like through, visits a lot of places. And like for people who travel, who are in the travel industry, for example, like, was there a particular story? Like, how did it come to you as an idea?
Not particularly particular story. I think it was just the frustration with like getting through security and there being no shops and no restaurants and that kind of thing. And you're like, oh, I didn't know this beforehand. And I think also some people say like, well, we'll just use the official airport website. But if you ever visit some official websites, they're pretty poor. Some are really good and do a really good job, but often some are really poor. And they don't offer like authentic tips or authentic information about an airport. It's just the official line, so it doesn't really tell you the truth in many aspects. And they also push a lot of stuff like their duty free and their offers, and the website's kind of quite cluttered with that kind of stuff. So I wanted to create something that's more authentic. But the original idea was just the frustration of getting through security and then being sat at the gate with nothing to do, nothing to eat, and that kind of stuff, or being sat on the floor with your laptop and nowhere to work. So getting that kind of key information is quite important to digital nomads. Where the charge points are, that kind of thing.
100%. That's one of the like worst things, because I always kind of joke that I'm happy to get to like the airport, a few hours before I really need to, because again, you just open up your laptop half the time and just sit there and work. So it's really not that big a deal. Like, say for the average traveller, for sure. What's one thing you kind of wish there was more of in airports? It's more of like a weird sort of fluffy question, I guess.
More of, I think definitely the water stations. There's some airports I've been to and there's like one and it's just after security, and if you miss it, it's kind of, you don't want to go all the way back there. So I think water fountains, the obvious one. You don't want to be buying bottles of water all the time. Refill your water. I think is with lounges these days. Well, I wish the lounges were slightly better. Sometimes the lounges are not that great, and it's like you sat there and it's quite dull, and you're like, actually, the restaurants are probably better. But so I think what else at airports? I think I hate it when you get stuck in one of those gates where it's a pen and you can't get out. There's like one vending machine and no toilets. So like having that information up front before you get there, knowing that you're going to have to go through that and get stuck in the pen before you get on the flight is kind of useful as well. I don't know. What do you think?
as I asked the question, I was like, oh God, I probably should have a really good answer for this. Yeah, I think, do you know what? One thing I'm seeing that hotels do a lot more is that they have designated co-work spaces, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? I would love to see, because obviously we have lounges and then you've got cafes, and it's very hit and miss, like on some places. Like I was just in Berlin, as you probably know, but I was just in Berlin, and that airport, if I had needed to do any work, my flight was early in the morning, but like, if I had to do any work, whatever, like there was no facilities whatsoever to go sit with your laptop and plug it in like Brandenburg, for example.
Yeah.
But then like I went to, where was it, Tbilisi, I think it was, where again the cafes had a bunch of plugs, and I could just sit there for as long as, obviously I've got coffee, but I could sit there for a while and had plugs and there was no problem. So I feel like what I like the hotels are doing is the fact that they have these co-work spaces, and I think that would be so great in airports, is to have that sort of medium between the lounges where you've got the buffets, you've got the fancy seats, you've got like, because they do have some meeting rooms in these lounges, but again, sometimes you don't want to pay €55 or whatever it is just to go sit there for like an hour, or sometimes you're only allowed to sit in there for 3 hours, for example. So I would love to have some kind of medium, because I know that they do it for airport hotels where you can pay by the hour sometimes. So if there was some kind of like structure for a co-work space where you could like pay however much money to go work for, say, 5 hours or however long you need before your flight, I would love to see more of that, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I think as you say, you go to an airport, often it will just be like the seating for food or dining and some charge spots, but like it's not set up for sitting down and working properly. As you say, like people potentially would pay a little bit of money to use that, a little bit like using a cyber cafe, but there's no computers there. Back in the day, that'd be really good. And like, I guess some airports probably have it, but like most, they're improving definitely in terms of like plug sockets and having charging points, those types of things.
Sure.
But having dedicated workspace would be great. And I'm sure a lot of these airports could get them sponsored as well, the area sponsored. But I guess things are changing. Maybe we'll see more of them.
Yeah, because I was thinking, again, it's not that I like, for example, when I'm sitting in cafes, for example, I feel guilty if I've not bought a coffee. But then there's only so much caffeine you can consume in a day, for example, or like there's so much cake you can consume. So it's not even like I don't want to necessarily pay for something, but it's that sort of like finding that difference between the guilt of like taking up too much space in a cafe and paying for like that designated space.
I used to use a laundrette, and I always thought that would be great as maybe a cafe or a workspace at the same time, because you spend so much time there waiting for your washing. And it's like, I used to take my laptop, so just needed a desk.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting is actually seeing that also now in general is that co-work and cafe thing, like concepts are starting to build. So again, I think there's so many different things that I'm so curious for, because once upon a time it would have been like, we need sleeping pods in the airport. Well, now you have got a version of that in a lot of airports, for example. So I think that'd be so interesting to see how that develops. So I guess like my next question for you is going to be like, what do you think, or do you think that the remote worker, digital nomad needs, or like the airport traveller, I guess in general, have their needs changed in, say, like the last 5 to 10 years?
5 to 10 years. Definitely in 10 years, I think, as you're saying, with these working spots or having a place to co-work, I think it's changed massively. I know in London, I have a flat in London, but it has no co-working space, but the flat's tiny. So like now they've started to build new flats, and it's kind of, they've got co-working spaces in the bottom, or there's one around the corner dedicated for that. So things are the same with airports. They're slowly changing for the travelers' needs, and you're seeing a lot of charge points all over. They're kind of installing charge points everywhere when they refit an airport, and it's like, actually there's too many now, but they are changing slowly. And I think maybe the next thing is, they'll have more desk space, I think, at airports for these types of people. I think there's a lot of people also like trying to stay over at airports, often with long connections and stuff and things like that. So maybe there'll be more sleeping pods. I know they've obviously got Yotel Air and that kind of stuff where you can sleep at the airport. It's a little bit expensive, but tiny pods. But I think there'll be more people maybe doing that as well. I think more people traveling more often. It's a different type of travel as well, to like the holiday maker or people casually traveling. I think more need to have these facilities to work, as you say, and to get some sleep before you fly.
For sure. And do you think that even from destinations, because I know that, like, for example, once upon a time, if you'd said, like, what's the best destination for a digital nomad, even though I really don't like that conversation, and like, what's the cheapest destination? I can't stand that question. But just thinking about, like, okay, like, what a digital nomad and remote workers looking for from a destination, do you think that's changed at all?
I think it's all personal preference, really. But yeah, I think people want, I think, nice cafes to work from, maybe a gym as digital nomads. It's kind of cliched in a way, but I mean, like if you look at Bali and Canggu and stuff, it's kind of everything's there for you as a digital nomad, but it's not really Bali. But in a way, you can see the appeal of it because you get your laundry done, you can go out for drinks, nice restaurants, every kind of different cuisine you can think of. Get a gym pass, you can do martial arts, you can do all this kind of all your hobbies, get your work done. There's co-working spots, there's a community, everything's there. But I don't know whether after a while people want to seek a different experience, really. So that's a great place to go and kind of get things done and stay as a base. But I think often digital nomads, you want to go out there and explore places at the same time. You want to be able to work, but you also want to get away from the crowds as well, I think. So I think, yeah, it's a personal preference. There's some people like different things. People like being in the city. Some people like being out in the countryside or on the coast and things like that. And that's the beauty of being a digital nomad. You can mix it up when you feel like.
It's so true. Because once upon a time, I feel like Bali was the go-to place for it. And I'm not saying that it's not now. I feel like there's still quite a big demand for Bali as a destination. But I guess now that more destinations are, for example, developing co-working spaces, they're developing communities, they're developing visas. Like, because wow, there's so much more infrastructure that makes it better for people to, or just a lot easier for people to access that kind of lifestyle. But what are your preferences when it comes to destination?
I think I kind of like it. I don't want to be talking about Bali all the time, but even when I went to Bali, it was kind of, I didn't know whether I hated Canggu or not, or loved it. So I kind of found it, all the facilities and stuff really useful and a good place to go back to. But then I like going away and exploring. So I think it has its place in terms of being useful to have all that kind of stuff for you and the ease of having things on your doorstep, having fast, decent Wi-Fi and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think I'm a backpacker essentially before digital nomadism was the thing. So like, I quite like going out and exploring with my backpack and working from anywhere. And I don't necessarily need community all the time or people around all the time, or I just need a decent desk with Wi-Fi or a cafe. So my preferences would be to mix it up with, going and socializing, getting your things done, and also going out and exploring and backpacking a little bit and getting off the beaten track and maybe exploring some beaches where there's no tourists, that kind of thing, and going hiking up a mountain or volcano, that kind of thing.
You're saying it very well. Is there anything that you think people still don't quite understand about remote work life or remote professional life?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess people who don't do it, it's kind of changed with the pandemic, hasn't it? Like, I had a 9-to-5 job many years ago, probably over 10 years ago now, something like that. And I was always just moaning why people are still commuting. It's like, you're commuting, you're stressed, you get into the office, you're stressed, you've been going through rush hour, you get there and you're like, I'm worn out, I've only just got in, and then you've got to do the same going back, whether that's getting on the tube and it's really busy or it's driving an hour to work. It's kind of wasted time in many ways and wasted costs. So I just didn't know why people weren't working from home for at least a couple of days a week. And then the pandemic's come along and everyone's like, oh, let's just do this. Why aren't we just doing this? So it's changed a lot. I think for people who aren't digital nomads and kind of have a normal life, so to speak, it's kind of, they're looking from the outside at it and it probably looks a little bit crazy. Like, what are these people doing? How are they making money? I don't know. A lot of the time it's like people think people are rich or something like that, or they've just got a load of money in the bank from somewhere and they can just do it and they're not working. But I guess that comes from seeing things through Instagram and photos and all the good aspects of travel, I guess, that people see. But yeah, I think people need to know that it's possible, I think, and there are a lot of remote jobs out there, and maybe even transitioning from having a base and doing a remote job and then packing up your stuff and going away. I guess you have to be in a certain situation where you haven't got that many commitments or you've got a lot of freedom. A lot of people have got commitments in life, so there's a lot of things to think about there. I think I've got a lot of friends also who have kids and stuff, but they are digital nomads and they still travel and they will teach their kids. So it's completely possible. I'm not sure if I had kids I could do it because it's hard enough just looking after myself, really. So I don't know how they do it, and it's amazing that they do. But it's possible, yeah. I think making that kind of switch is a big leap, but you only live once, don't you? As the cliche goes, it's like you've got to get out there and experience the world. And what better way to do it than slow traveling and working as you do?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's definitely not for everybody, that's for sure. And there's definitely a lot more to it than what you see with like people in there. And I'm completely guilty of doing the whole laptop and coconut like or coffee and at the beach like photo. But it's definitely a lot more to it than people don't really realize, like how much effort kind of goes into making that work for yourself before you see the results on Instagram. And yeah, I know that for me, for example, trying to even remember to post sometimes is another thing entirely. So when people do say, "Oh, you were at the beach today," I'm like, "Yeah, that was my weekend. That's how I designed my weekend. Not like this is my life every day."
I didn't post anything about my food poisoning the other day, so just the beach and how great it is. So yeah, some people do that kind of thing, don't they? So maybe I should have, but I didn't capture any photos. So
Were you living in the moment? How dare you?
the other thing with being a digital nomad or thinking of being a digital nomad, it's kind of funny because you kind of think of it as like a permanent shift, but it doesn't need to be, and it's kind of hard to be a permanent shift because you don't know what's going to happen. You might want to travel and you end up traveling for 6 months. You might end up traveling for a year. You don't know what's going to happen after a year as well. So like, it's not like you have to do it forever, and people don't do it forever. They go back, they have a base, they travel. They may get rid of the base, go away and be a digital nomad again after a few years. So it's not like one thing and not one rule for it. People do it in different ways, I think. And I think just because it's got a term digital nomad, it doesn't mean there's strict rules around it. It's just travel and working and traveling slow, I think, for me anyway. So I think, yeah, there's no strict rule and there's different ways to do it.
For sure. I think that's what people tend to forget. It's that one side of like, it's not all about, wanting to quit, because I think a lot of people have this misconception that digital nomads, for example, want to hate on people who have an office 9 to 5, and that's not it at all. I find with a lot of people who have taken the digital nomad leap or are, remote working or, have businesses that are remote or whatever it is, actually what it is normally is that they want the flexible lifestyle. They want the environment that they've created themselves so that they can then actually produce better results for business. It's not about the location. It's about being able to have a setup that works for you to produce the best results. And I think that kind of gets, and if that happens to be that you like going into an office every day, great, good for you. But that's not necessarily what like everybody else also wants to. I'm finding that a lot more, and even like down to like soft skills. I feel like we need to talk more about like in general the soft skills that come from somebody who goes abroad, like all the soft skills you gain from going abroad, managing your lifestyle that way. Because again, it's very easy to kind of just go into an office like every day and just sort of like forget, just sort of do your work as normal. But there's a lot more elements, I think, that a digital nomad or remote worker also brings to the table that we don't maybe talk about as much too. I don't know if you would agree or not.
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember. I read like some quote the other day. It's pretty cheesy quote. I can't quite remember it, but it's more like, the value in having experiences. And I think if you're just commuting every day to your job, it's like you're kind of the breadth of your experiences are more limited than if you're traveling around and you're doing different things, you're seeing different places, experiencing different cultures, doing things, seeing so much. That kind of has an impact on your personality and how you think about the world. And I think taking that to a workplace maybe brings a different angle to ideas or trying to troubleshoot things. I think it's good to have those types of people in the workforce that have been around and have done different things. I think it helps creativity and problem solving.
Oh, lots of good stuff. I guess like one of my like final questions would be, is there anything on the topic of different destinations? Because we talked about companies like generally, we talked about airports, but what about destinations? Do you think there's anything that destinations need to know about remote workers and digital nomads at all?
There's a lot of different countries doing quite a lot of initiatives, aren't they? But it's often when you travel to the countries, you might know more than me, but I often don't see that stuff in practice. Like, where's the co-working space? Where's the things that they set up? It's often hard to find, but you hear about it online, but when you get there, I can't find it. So I think it's being proactive about these kind of things and maybe even having a dedicated portal and things like that, and promoting the aspects of what they've got for digital nomads. Have they got co-working spaces? Have they got all these activities you can get involved in? How easy is it to rent properties? This kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's just the information and being aware that what's available in a destination, maybe even the digital nomad visas, these types of things. Sure, there's some destinations who have done it well. you'll probably know more than me. So have you come across any?
Destinations that are doing it well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would say that I'm curious to know more. I don't know enough yet, but I feel like there are destinations like Argentina, so Buenos Aires, for example. They have a whole welcome package for remote workers that you get before, like literally as soon as you land, for example. Got a whole community set up who will help you literally with that journey. Moving into it. And I quite like that idea that you are literally welcomed by people, because I think that's one of the biggest struggles from my personal experience anyway, is that digital nomading can be lonely if you're doing it by yourself, as can any travel, obviously. But if you've got that kind of ready and waiting community, or there's ready and waiting infrastructures, then quite a lot of the time, like that makes obviously things a lot more appealing. There's a reason, for example, that people still flock to Madeira in Portugal, for example, because there's been this community for, where are we now? So nearly 3 years. Yeah, nearly 3-4 years now, at least, that are ready and waiting. You've got the like Discord groups you can jump into. You've got again, information that you can find readily available. They've got the structures available. You find housing. There's community managers. So I think from that perspective, I would say that there are definitely those destinations that are doing it very well. Georgia, where you and I were at the beginning of the year, they did a whole push around remote work that people were quite surprised to find out. It was called Remotely Georgia. And they did, again, a whole thing where they actually shared on their tourist information page about the fact that these are the visas, that's the situation. You don't need a visa for a lot of countries to be here for a year. The cost of living is very low. There are co-work spaces. And I think the community side, I had to do a little bit of an extra deep dive on. But they, again, are very open and very, I think it's just about transparency, isn't it? Just being very much upfront about, we cater to a lot of different types of traveller too.
Yeah.
So I guess they're ones that come to mind straight away. Yeah, sorry, you were going to say something.
I think it's a no-brainer for these destinations in a way. If they want digital nomads to come to their country, just have that information up front, have it in their marketing material, have a website, a nice hub that kind of displays exactly what they offer, and even for destinations to have a co-working space available throughout the year, it's not a huge cost. Could be one aspect that appeals to a lot of people, that you've got the ability to just turn up and co-work from somewhere in the city or wherever it is. And as you say, having that welcome pack and knowing there's workspace there, there's accommodation here, there's a community here, social events here, that kind of stuff. It seems like that stuff doesn't cost a huge amount of money for a destination to actually do. It's just coordinating that and encouraging people to come and to promote it online and have that information available and being transparent with it. I think I haven't seen that from a lot of destinations, so I think it seems like a win-win to me, that there's not a huge cost involved, and it's just kind of making sure the facilities are there for digital nomads, and the Wi-Fi is quick enough, and the workspace is great, and there's accommodation, there's a community, and those types of things. Just encouraging that, and yeah, I can't see that being a huge amount of cost really involved. So I don't know why more destinations don't do it if they do want digital nomads to visit and stay and spend their money in that destination. Yeah,
I think a lot of it obviously comes down to the fact that obviously the industry is still, as we know, recovering from a certain little pandemic we just had. But I definitely agree that I think if people who have got communities and websites like yourself and I, that as long as we are championing that it would be so interesting to see what happens. Because I feel like already, even within the space of 2-3 years since the lockdowns obviously were altered, I think that there's been a lot of movement already, and it's only going to accelerate because we had that time to also again, it's all the power of the internet, right? Being able to start these things and find like-minded people who are also doing similar stuff. So I know for me, I'm definitely curious to see what we could be doing next, as more and more amazing things concepts like in departures, for example, start appearing.
And there's just I think there's a lot of more people thinking about remote work as well after the pandemic. So there's so many more jobs that have gone remote. So a lot of people are thinking, hang on a minute, haven't got anything to be here for. I want to travel. I've got this remote job. Maybe I could get another remote job to get more flexibility, and maybe I can go and see the world at the same time.
For sure. Okay, I've got a couple fun questions for you before we wrap things up. Are you ready?
No. Go on then.
I was expecting that. So what are the top couple things you need in your carry-on?
I mean, a change of underwear has to be number one, right?
Amazing.
Well, I mean, just the change of clothes is always good because often your luggage goes missing, or you miss your next connecting flight and your luggage is on that flight or whenever. Your luggage has gone missing somewhere and you haven't got it, and you're stuck somewhere. You need to change your clothes. Toothbrush is good as well.
Is there anything, I was going to say, is there anything that people might be surprised you have in your carry-on, but I feel like you kind of answered that.
Yeah, I mean, change of clothes. I actually forgot the other trip, and it was my luggage didn't arrive somewhere, and I didn't have any change of clothes, so it wasn't pleasant. So yeah, it's always good to do that because airlines are always doing stuff with your luggage. Try and think of one more, but and then the usual stuff is just power banks, laptops, isn't it, for digital nomads? I don't take that much, so yeah, change of clothes, toothbrush, that's it. Nothing exciting.
No, I think that's unusual, to be honest. That was just a fantastic answer. Very relatable, I imagine, too. Slightly nerdy question. What size is your power bank?
I've got two. One's, well, they're both like bricks, but I don't know what size it is or how. It's Anchor one. It's huge. It's like a brick. So it doubles up. If you're in a sketchy area and someone's mugging you, you can like get out. It's going to do some damage. So I don't recommend doing that, but it's always a good backup if you're in trouble.
Sounds so doggy to ask, but I'm so curious because, again, I know for me, I have one that is very old that I had from forever and an age ago, and it probably only does about charge. So I think for me, I'm curious now, and then I see people who are carrying around ones that are literally as heavy as a laptop in itself. I'm going, why? Like, that doesn't sound very conducive to digital nomad life. But again, it charges their laptop, it charges twice, it charges their phone. So I feel like for myself and anyone who's listening, if you want an idea to model on, good to know.
I actually bought mine and I was trying to charge my laptop with it and it didn't really work. It sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. So it's a huge thing, a huge power bank. It's about £100 or something like that. But I would say actually the smaller version I've got that doesn't have a screen on it and that kind of thing is like actually better, and it charges and seems to hold its charge better. So I don't know whether technology is always moving on, so it's hard to know. But the one I've got, I kind of regret getting it because it's massive, and it's not as good as the smaller one I've got. So I would like to know as well if people can charge the laptops off them. I've been struggling with mine, so kind of gave up after a while. But I've got a Mac that's always needs charging because it's about 8 years old now or something. So
yeah, definitely can relate to that one. Okay, final question. Fill in the blank. Home is where?
I would like it to be on the beach. At the beach.
That works. Home is where the beach is. That works. Awesome. Paul, it's been great to chat. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Remote Life. And thank you, Paul, for taking the time to speak with us. You can find more details about In Departures below. Thank you so much again for listening. And we can't wait to remote work with you again soon.